The message arrived at 3 in the morning, Earth Standard Time. Commander Elena Vasquez was already awake, nursing a cup of coffee in her small quarters aboard the human embassy station. She had learned long ago that sleep came rarely in her line of work. When her tablet lit up with the official seal of the Celestial Tribunal, she knew immediately that something was wrong. The message was brief and cold. She was to appear before the Sovereign Council in 72 hours. No explanation, no option to decline. Just the time, the location, and a warning that failure to comply would result in immediate sanctions against humanity. Elena had been Earth's primary diplomat to the Galactic Coalition for 5 years now. In that time, she had attended hundreds of meetings, negotiated dozens of treaties, and smiled through countless insults from species who viewed humans as primitive newcomers. But she had never been summoned before the Council itself. Nobody was summoned before the Council unless something serious was happening. She spent the next 3 days preparing. She reviewed every interaction humanity had with the Coalition. She studied the Council members, their species, their histories, and their tactics. The more she learned, the more her stomach tightened with worry. The Sovereign Council did not operate like Earth's governments. They did not debate. They did not compromise. They commanded, and others obeyed. The Council consisted of 5 species, each representing an ancient empire that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years before humanity even invented the wheel. The Zynthians were crystalline beings of pure logic and efficiency. The Draconians were reptilian warriors who had conquered half the galaxy before agreeing to join the Coalition. The other 3 species were equally powerful, equally ancient, and equally accustomed to being obeyed without question. When the day came, Elena dressed in her formal diplomatic uniform, navy blue with gold trim, medals from her time as a Marine displayed on her chest. She wanted them to see that she was not just a diplomat. She was a soldier too. Humans could negotiate, but they could also fight if they needed to. The escort arrived exactly on time. 6 armed guards from 3 different species, all towering over her 5'7" frame. They said nothing as they led her through the massive corridors of the Celestial Tribunal station. The station itself was designed to intimidate. The ceilings stretched impossibly high. The walls were made of some dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Everything about the place screamed power and dominance. Other diplomats they passed in the halls gave Elena pitying looks. Some averted their eyes entirely. One elderly ambassador from a species she did not recognize actually whispered, "I'm sorry," as she walked by. That was not encouraging. The council chamber was worse than she had imagined. The room was enormous, roughly the size of a football stadium. The gravity had been increased to twice Earth normal, making each step feel like a struggle. The air was thick and hot, probably comfortable for the reptilian draconians, but oppressive for a human. 5 massive thrones sat elevated at the far end of the chamber, each one occupied by a council member who looked down at her with expressions ranging from boredom to open contempt. Elena walked the long distance from the entrance to the center of the chamber. Her legs burned from the extra gravity. Sweat began to form on her forehead from the heat, but she kept her pace steady and her back straight. She had marched through worse conditions during her military training. She would not show weakness here. When she reached the designated spot, a circle marked on the floor in glowing symbols, she stopped and stood at attention. She did not bow. Humanity had agreed to show respect to the council, but they had never agreed to bow. That was a small point of pride that Elena intended to maintain. High Arbiter Zelthos spoke first. His voice was like wind chimes, musical but cold. His crystalline body refracted the light in the chamber into rainbow patterns across the walls. "Commander Elena Vasquez of Earth, you stand before the Sovereign Council to answer for the actions of your species." Elena kept her face neutral. "I am here as requested, High Arbiter. What actions does the Council wish to discuss?" Chancellor Vorketh leaned forward in his throne. The massive draconian warrior was covered in dark green scales with eyes like molten gold and teeth that could easily tear through steel. "Do not play ignorant, human. Your species has been expanding at an alarming rate. In the past 10 years, you have established colonies in 12 systems. You have built military installations. You have begun mining operations in disputed territories. This expansion must stop. Elena chose her words carefully. Humanity has followed all coalition guidelines for expansion. We have only colonized uninhabited systems or established presence with proper documentation. We have violated no laws. Another council member, a being that appeared to be made of liquid shadow, spoke with a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Laws are not the issue, human. Control is. Your species is too aggressive, too unpredictable. You are destabilizing the carefully maintained balance of power in this region of space. Zelthos raised one crystalline hand, and a holographic display appeared in the air between Elena and the council. It showed a map of human-controlled space, highlighted in red against the blue and green territories of other coalition members. Your expansion will cease immediately. You will establish no new colonies. You will build no new military installations. You will confine your activities to your current 12 systems until the council determines that your species has learned proper restraint. Elena felt her heart rate increase, but she kept her breathing steady. This was worse than she had expected. The council was not asking for negotiation. They were demanding complete submission. And if humanity chooses to continue our planned expansion? Vorketh's laugh was a deep, rumbling sound that seemed to shake the chamber. Then we will implement corrective measures. Your military is no match for any one of our species, let alone all 5. Your economy depends on trade routes we control. Your colonies exist because we allow them to exist. Do not mistake our tolerance for weakness, human. The other council members nodded in agreement. One of them, a being that looked like a floating collection of geometric shapes, added, "Other species have challenged the council in the past. None of them retained their independence afterward. Consider this a mercy, that we are giving you the choice to comply voluntarily." Elena stood in silence for a long moment. She could feel the weight of the entire chamber pressing down on her. Not just the physical weight of the increased gravity, but the weight of what was being demanded. The council wanted humanity to stop growing, stop exploring, stop being what humans had always been. They wanted Earth to become just another minor species that followed orders and stayed in its place. She thought about the people back home, the colonists who had risked everything to build new lives on distant worlds, the scientists who were unlocking the secrets of the universe, the children who dreamed of walking on planets that had never been touched by human feet. And she thought about humanity's history, about all the times humans had been told to stop, to submit, to know their place.
High Arbiter Zelthos, Chancellor Vorketh, honored council members, Elena said, her voice steady. I will convey your demands to my government immediately. See that you do, Zelthos said. You have 30 days to provide confirmation of compliance.
This audience is concluded. Elena turned to leave, her mind already racing through the implications of what had just happened. But then something occurred to her. Something about the way the council had presented their ultimatum. Something about their certainty that humanity would comply. And despite the gravity, despite the heat, despite the very real threat that had just been levied against her entire species, Elena Vasquez felt the corners of her mouth turn upward. She smiled. Not a nervous smile or a fake diplomatic smile. A real, genuine smile of amusement. She could not help it. The situation was just too familiar, too historically human. The council chamber fell completely silent. Every eye fixed on her. Security systems throughout the station began to activate, reading her biometrics and finding them anomalous. Her heart rate was steady. Her stress hormones were normal. Yet she was smiling. In the thousands of years that species had appeared before this council, no one had ever smiled. The silence in the council chamber stretched for what felt like an eternity. Elena's smile remained on her face, not because she was trying to provoke them, but because she genuinely found the situation darkly amusing. She had spent years studying alien psychology and protocol, and she knew exactly how unprecedented her reaction was. High Arbiter Zelthos was the first to respond. His crystalline form seemed to pulse with brighter light, a sign of agitation in Xinthian physiology. Explain yourself, human. We have just delivered an ultimatum that could result in the destruction of your species, and you respond with amusement? Elena took a breath and forced her expression back to neutrality, though the ghost of the smile still played at the edges of her mouth. My apologies, High Arbiter. I meant no disrespect. It was an involuntary response. Chancellor. Vorketh rose from his throne, his massive form casting a shadow across half the chamber. Involuntary? You expect us to believe that your species smiles involuntarily when threatened? His golden eyes narrowed dangerously. Perhaps we have been too lenient. Perhaps immediate military action is required to teach humanity proper respect. Several of the council members began speaking at once, their voices rising in a cacophony of anger and confusion. Elena could see security guards moving closer to her position. The situation was escalating quickly, and she needed to regain control of it before things went too far. If I may, Elena said, raising her voice to be heard over the commotion, I would like to explain. With the council's permission, I believe I can help you understand why I smiled. It may be relevant to your decision regarding humanity's future. Zelthos raised his hand again and silence fell immediately. Speak then, human, but choose your words carefully. Your species' fate may depend on them. Elena nodded. What I am about to tell you is not a threat or a boast. It is simply information about humanity that your intelligence services may not have fully analyzed. I smiled because the situation you have presented is familiar to us. Throughout our history, humanity has repeatedly found itself in circumstances very similar to this one. She began to pace slowly, her movements careful in the heavy gravity. Let me tell you a story. 2,400 years ago, by Earth's calendar, there was a battle at a place called Thermopylae. 300 soldiers from a city called Sparta faced an army of perhaps 100,000. They were ordered to surrender. Their king, Leonidas, was told that his men would be spared if they laid down their weapons. Do you know what he said? The council members watched her in silence. She could see confusion on their faces, or at least what she had learned to recognize as confusion in their alien features. He said, "Come and take them," and then he smiled according to the histories, because he knew something that his enemies did not understand. He knew that Spartans had been raised from birth to fight against impossible odds. He knew that dying in battle was preferable to living in submission. The 300 died, but they held that position long enough for the rest of Greece to prepare its defenses. The massive army was eventually defeated, Elena continued, warming to her subject. 700 years ago, humans fought a war that killed tens of millions of our people. During one battle in a city called Stalingrad, one army completely surrounded another. The trapped soldiers were starving, freezing, running out of ammunition. They were told to surrender or die. Most people expected them to choose survival. Instead, they fought for months in the ruins of that city. The battle became a turning point in the entire war. Vorketh interrupted. These are stories of your species' capacity for violence. They do not explain your smile. They only confirm our assessment that humanity is dangerously aggressive. That is not the point of these stories, Elena replied. The point is what came after. The point is that humans have a particular response to being told that we have no chance, that we should accept our fate, that we should know our place. We have a word for it in our language. We call it defiance. She stopped pacing and looked directly at each council member in turn. 55 years ago, 3 humans were traveling to Earth's moon in a primitive spacecraft. An explosion crippled their vessel when they were already far from home. They were going to die in the cold vacuum of space. Everyone knew it. The mission controllers knew it. The astronauts knew it. The whole world was watching, waiting for the inevitable tragedy. But those 3 humans did not accept death. They worked with the engineers back on Earth, and together they invented solutions to problems that had never been solved before. They turned their crippled spacecraft into a lifeboat. They used the moon's gravity to sling themselves back toward Earth. They survived on failing life support systems for days, and they made it home. When one of them was asked how they stayed, "Calm during the crisis," he said. "I guess we just didn't have time to panic." Elena could see that she had their attention now. The council members were leaning forward slightly, focused on her words. "I smiled, High Arbiter, because when you delivered your ultimatum, I recognized it. I recognized the tone, the certainty, the expectation of submission, and I remembered how that has worked out for others who have tried it with humans throughout our history. "Are you threatening this council?" Zelthos asked, his voice like ice. "No," Elena said firmly. "I am educating this council. You have databases full of information about humanity. You know our technology, our population, our military capabilities. But I do not think you truly understand what drives us. We are persistence hunters, High Arbiter. That is how we evolved. On our world, we did not have claws or venom or armor. We had endurance. We could not outrun our prey, so we followed it. We walked after it for hours, for days if necessary, until it collapsed from exhaustion. And then we took what we needed to survive." She gestured to the holographic map still floating in the air. "You see our expansion as aggression. We see it as survival. We see it as fulfilling our nature. For 50 years, we have been following the Coalition's rules. We have been polite. We have been patient. But make no mistake, we have also been learning. Learning your technologies. Learning your tactics. Learning your weaknesses." The shadow being spoke again, its voice somehow conveying both curiosity and concern. "You are saying that humanity will not comply with our demands. I am saying that threatening humanity is not the path to compliance. It is the path to resistance." I smiled because the moment you delivered that ultimatum, you changed the nature of our relationship with the Coalition. Before today, we were newcomers trying to find our place. After today, we are a species that has been challenged, and humans have a very particular response to challenges. Elena pulled out her tablet and tapped it a few times. "While I was standing here listening to your demands, I received 7 messages from Earth. Would you like to know what they said? They said that news of this meeting has leaked. They said that human media networks are already speculating about Coalition aggression. They said that recruitment for the Colonial Defense Forces has increased by 40% in the last hour alone. They said that 3 major corporations have announced plans to accelerate their shipbuilding programs." She looked at Vorketh directly. "You told me that humanity's military is no match for the Council. You are probably right, today. But you should know that our greatest technological advances have always come during times of conflict. We split the atom while fighting a global war. We reached space during a Cold War between rival nations. We developed artificial intelligence while competing for economic dominance. Threatening us does not make us weaker. It makes us focused." Zelthos was silent for a long moment, his crystalline form refracting light in patterns that Elena had learned to recognize as deep thought. Finally he spoke. "You are asking us to believe that your smile was not mockery or madness, but recognition. Recognition of a pattern in your species' history." "Yes, High Arbiter. I smiled because I have read enough history to know how this story goes. You have presented humanity with a choice between submission and struggle. And humans always choose to struggle. It is what we are. It is what we have always been." Chancellor Vorketh growled low in his throat. "Then you are fools. The Council has resources you cannot imagine. Technologies that would seem like magic to your primitive science. Alliances that span the galaxy." Elena's smile returned, smaller this time, but no less genuine. "And yet, with all of that power, with all of that technology, you chose to threaten rather than negotiate. You chose to demand rather than discuss. That tells me something important about the Council. It tells me that you are afraid of what humanity might become if we are allowed to continue growing." The chamber fell silent again. Elena could feel the weight of every eye upon her, but she stood her ground. She had said what needed to be said. Now she would face whatever consequences came from her honesty. "This audience is adjourned," Zelthos said abruptly. "Commander Vasquez, you will remain on this station until we have deliberated on your words. Guards escort her to secure quarters." As the guards surrounded her and began leading her from the chamber, Elena heard Vorketh speak quietly to the other council members. "She is either the bravest human alive, or the most foolish." Zelthos responded, his voice troubled. "That is what concerns me, Chancellor. I do not believe she is foolish at all." The quarters they gave Elena were comfortable but clearly designed as a cell. One room with a bed, a desk, and a small bathroom. The door had no handle on the inside. There were no windows, just a screen showing a peaceful forest scene from some alien world. 2 guards stood outside at all times. She was a prisoner in all but name. Elena did not mind. She had been in worse places during her military career. Besides, being confined gave her time to think and plan. She knew that everything she had said to the council was being analyzed right now. Every word was being picked apart by teams of experts trying to determine if humanity was bluffing or genuinely prepared for conflict. What Elena also knew, but the council did not, was that she had not been bluffing at all. In the council's private chambers, an emergency session was underway. All 5 members were present, along with their chief advisors and intelligence officers. The mood was tense. What should have been a simple display of power had become something much more complicated. "We need to understand what we are dealing with," Zelthos said, his crystalline form dim with concentration. "I want a complete analysis of human history, psychology, and military capabilities. I want it within 12 hours. Chancellor Vorketh slammed a clawed hand against his throne. "We already know their capabilities. They are insignificant compared to ours. Why are we wasting time on analysis when we should be preparing a military response?" "Because," Zelthos replied coldly, "the humans' words have raised questions that our previous intelligence did not answer." She was not afraid of us, Vorketh. She should have been terrified, but instead she smiled. "I have led this council for 3 centuries. I have seen hundreds of species appear before us. None of them smiled." A Xinthian intelligence officer stepped forward, her crystalline body smaller and younger than Zelthos, but still impressive. "High Arbiter, I have already begun preliminary research. What I am finding is disturbing." "Explain," Zelthos commanded. The officer activated a holographic display. "Humans evolved on a planet they call Earth. By galactic standards, it is one of the most hostile environments for intelligent life that we have on record. Extreme temperature variations, hundreds of thousands of species competing for resources, regular extinction events caused by volcanic activity, meteor impacts, and climate shifts." Vorketh snorted. "Many species evolved in difficult conditions. That does not make them special." "True, Chancellor. But most species that evolved in such conditions developed natural defenses. Armor, venom, size, speed. Humans developed none of these things. By all logic, they should have gone extinct long before achieving sentience." Another display appeared, showing human anatomy. Humans are weak by galactic standards. Their skin tears easily. Their bones break easily. They have no natural weapons. An average draconian could kill an average human with minimal effort. "Then why are we concerned?" Vorketh asked impatiently. "Because humans did not survive by being strong. They survived by being persistent, by being adaptable, by being, as Commander Vasquez said, persistence hunters. Our xenobiologists have studied their evolution. Humans would chase prey for hours, sometimes days, in the heat of their planet. The prey would run until it collapsed from exhaustion, and then the humans would take it. No other predator on their planet hunted this way." A shadow of understanding crossed Zelthos's face. "You are saying that humans evolved to never give up, to continue pursuing a goal regardless of immediate setbacks." "Exactly, High Arbiter. And this trait appears throughout their recorded history. I have been reviewing their military conflicts, as Commander Vasquez suggested. The pattern is clear. When faced with superior force, humans do not typically surrender. They adapt. They find weaknesses. They endure." She pulled up battle records from human history. The Battle of Thermopylae that she mentioned was real. 300 soldiers held a mountain pass against an army for days. The siege of Stalingrad lasted 5 months and resulted in over 2 million casualties, but the defending force never surrendered the city. There are dozens of similar examples throughout human history. Another advisor, this one from the floating geometric species, added its analysis. "We have also reviewed their technological development. It is unlike any pattern we have seen in other species. Most civilizations develop technology gradually, with steady progress over millennia. Humans have had explosive bursts of innovation, particularly during periods of conflict. New displays showed human technological advancement. They went from basic flight to landing on their moon in 66 years. From their first computer to artificial intelligence in 70 years. From discovering nuclear fission to fusion power in 80 years. Each major leap came during or immediately after a major war or crisis. They weaponize crisis, the geometric being said. When presented with an existential threat, they do not freeze. They innovate faster. Vorketh was beginning to look less certain. But their current technology is still centuries behind ours. Their ships are slower. Their weapons are weaker. Their shields are primitive. Today, yes, Zelthos said quietly. But what about in 10 years, 20? If we threaten them, if we give them a reason to focus all of their resources on military advancement, how long before they close that gap? A new intelligence officer entered the chamber, moving quickly. High Arbiter, we have intercepted communications from human space. I think you need to see this. The display changed to show data streams from human networks. This is from the past 6 hours, since news of the Council's ultimatum began spreading through human space. Military recruitment has increased by 73%. Stock prices for defense contractors have doubled. 3 separate human governments have announced emergency funding for weapons research. University laboratories are reporting volunteer offers from retired scientists. And this? The display showed a video that had gone viral across human networks. A young human woman stood in front of a camera, speaking with passion. They think they can tell us where we can and cannot go. They think we will just accept their limits and stay in our corner of space like good little children. But they don't know us. They don't know what humans do when someone tells us we can't do something. We prove them wrong. Every single time. The video cut to scenes of human colonies, human ships, human families living on distant worlds. The woman's voice continued. My parents were colonists. They left Earth because they believed humanity deserved to reach for the stars. I am enlisting in the Colonial Defense Forces today because I believe the same thing, and I know I am not alone. The display showed the view counter on the video. Over 4 billion views in 6 hours. There are thousands of videos like this, the intelligence officer said. Humans across their entire sphere of control are mobilizing. Not in panic, but in determination. They are not preparing to surrender. They are preparing to fight. Chancellor Vorketh stared at the displays in disbelief. This is madness. Do they not understand that we could destroy their entire military in a matter of weeks? I do not think they care, Zelthos said. Or rather, they care, but it does not change their response. This is what Commander Vasquez was trying to tell us. Threatening humanity does not produce submission. It produces resistance. The shadow being spoke up, its voice thoughtful. There is another factor we have not considered. Commander Vasquez has not been sitting quietly in her quarters. Our surveillance shows that she has been sending messages. To whom? Zelthos asked sharply. Not to Earth, to other species here on the station. Minor species. Non-council members. She has been speaking with their diplomats, their merchants, their citizens. She has been asking questions about council policies, about grievances, about why certain species are not allowed to expand while others are. Vorketh growled. She is trying to undermine us. She is building alliances, Zelthos corrected. And she is doing it cleverly. She is not presenting herself as a threat to the council. She is presenting herself as a fellow victim of council overreach. She is finding common ground with species that have long resented our dominance, but have been too afraid or too weak to challenge us. The geometric being rotated thoughtfully. If humanity positions itself as the champion of these lesser species, if they can form a coalition of non-council members, they could create significant political pressure. Not enough to defeat us militarily, but enough to fragment our authority. We could stop her, Vorketh said. We could imprison her formally. We could even eliminate her. And make her a martyr, Zelthos replied. No, that would only make things worse. The humans would use her death as a rallying cry. The other species would see it as proof that the council rules through fear, rather than justice. For several long minutes, the council chamber was silent as the leaders contemplated their situation. What should have been a simple exercise of authority had become a complex political and strategic problem. Finally, Zelthos spoke. We need more information. I want psychological profiles of human leadership. I want economic analysis of their systems. I want to know if they are capable of sustaining a long-term conflict with us. And I want options that do not involve making the situation worse. As the council members dispersed to their various tasks, 3 weeks had passed since Elena's appearance before the council. In that time, the galaxy had watched with growing interest as humanity refused to back down. What had begun as a simple ultimatum had transformed into something much larger, something that threatened to reshape the balance of power in the entire region. The changes in human space were dramatic. Every news network in the coalition carried stories about humanity's response to the Council's demands. And the response was not submission. It was defiance on a scale that shocked even veteran political observers. In Earth's orbital shipyards, construction had accelerated to a pace that seemed impossible. New vessels were being completed every week, each one more advanced than the last. Human engineers had apparently been holding back their best designs, waiting for a moment when they would be needed. That moment had arrived. Human colonies had not stopped expanding. In fact, they had doubled their efforts. 5 new colony ships had launched since the Council's ultimatum, each one heading to systems that had been identified but not yet settled. When coalition observers protested, human officials responded with a simple message: show us the law we are breaking. Because legally, technically, humanity was not breaking any coalition rules. The Council's demands had been just that, demands. They had not been formalized into actual law. And humans were very good at finding loopholes. But the most significant change was economic. Human corporations had begun a campaign of aggressive market competition that was reshaping trade throughout the region. They were offering advanced technology at prices that Council-aligned businesses could not match. They were undercutting shipping rates. They were providing services that had previously been monopolized by Council species. And they were doing it all legally, using the same trade agreements that the Council had established centuries ago. In the Council chambers, the emergency sessions had become daily occurrences. High Arbiter Zelthos stood before a holographic display showing human economic activity, his crystalline form pulsing with agitation. They are dismantling our economic control without firing a single shot, he said, his voice carrying a note of grudging admiration. Every trade agreement we have established, every regulation we have put in place, they are using against us. A draconian military advisor gestured to another display. And they are building ships faster than our intelligence predicted was possible. Our analysts believe they had the capacity for this production all along, but they deliberately kept it hidden. They wanted us to underestimate them. Chancellor Vorketh stared at the displays with growing anger. This is intolerable. We gave them a choice and they chose defiance. We should crush them now before they become a larger threat. With what forces? Zelthos asked quietly. Have you reviewed the military analysis? A new display appeared, showing tactical simulations. Our military is superior in every measurable way. Our ships are faster, our weapons stronger, our shields more advanced. But humans have prepared defensive positions throughout their territory. Taking those positions would require significant force, and we would take heavy casualties. The geometric being added its analysis. More importantly, such an action would require mobilizing forces from throughout Council space. This would leave other regions vulnerable, and it would signal to every non-Council species that we are willing to use military force to suppress competition. As we should be, Vorketh growled. Perhaps, Zelthos replied, but there are consequences to such actions. Our intelligence indicates that 57 non-Council species have increased their communications with human diplomats in the past 3 weeks. They are watching to see how we respond. If we attack humanity, we risk driving those species into an alliance against us. The shadow being spoke, its voice carrying from the walls themselves. Commander Vasquez has been busy. She has met with representatives from 32 different species. She has not offered them military alliances or trade deals. She has simply asked them questions. Questions about their experiences with Council governance. Questions about their own expansion being limited. Questions about whether they believe the current system is fair. She is poisoning them against us, Vorketh said. She is making them think, Zelthos corrected, and that may be more dangerous. An urgent message arrived and a junior Zynthian officer appeared in the chamber, moving with obvious distress. High Arbiter, we have a situation. The Javine Confederacy has just announced its withdrawal from several Council trade agreements. They cite human competition as the reason, but our analysts believe it is a political statement. The Javine were a minor species, but they controlled key shipping routes. Their withdrawal was significant. This is what she has been working toward, Zelthos said, his tone grim. She is creating fractures in the coalition. She is showing other species that it is possible to challenge our authority and survive. Another alert appeared on the displays. High Arbiter, you have a message from Commander Vasquez. She requests another audience with the council. Vorketh laughed harshly. The human dares to request an audience? After everything she has done? I say we deny her and move forward with military action. Zelthos was silent for a long moment, his crystalline structure refracting light in complex patterns. Finally he spoke. No, we will grant her audience. I want to hear what she has to say. Perhaps she is preparing to offer humanity's surrender. And if she is not, the shadow being asked, then we will have to make some very difficult decisions. The council chamber was even more crowded than it had been during Elena's first appearance. Word had spread throughout the station that something significant was about to happen, and diplomats from dozens of species had found reasons to be present. The gallery sections were filled with observers, all waiting to see what the human would say. Elena walked into the chamber alone, without guards this time. The council had granted her request to appear without restraints or escort. She wore the same formal uniform she had worn before, but she seemed somehow different, more confident, more certain. She stopped at the same marked circle in the center of the chamber and stood at attention, waiting for the council to speak first. Zelthos's voice rang out, clear and cold. Commander Vasquez, you requested this audience. Speak. Elena looked up at the 5 thrones, her expression calm. High Arbiter, members of the council, I come before you today to present a choice. Not for humanity, but for you. Vorketh leaned forward menacingly. You dare to present us with choices? You are in no position to make demands, human. I am not making demands, Elena replied evenly.
I am simply presenting facts and allowing you to make an informed decision.
That is what diplomats do, after all. She activated her own holographic display, linking it to the chamber's systems. Images appeared in the air showing data streams and analysis. In the 3 weeks since your ultimatum, humanity has demonstrated several things. We have shown that we can expand our economy. We have shown that we can build our military capacity. We have shown that we can form relationships with other species. And most importantly, we have shown that we will not submit to threats. Is there a point to this recitation? Zelthos asked. Yes, High Arbiter. The point is this. You can continue down the path you have chosen, or you can choose a different path. The first path leads to conflict. Perhaps you win that conflict easily. Perhaps it costs you more than you expect. Either way, the political cost will be significant. Every species in this galaxy will know that the Council maintains its power through force, rather than justice. Elena changed the display, showing the communications between humanity and other species. The second path is negotiation. You acknowledge that humanity has the right to exist as an independent, expanding civilization. You work with us to establish reasonable guidelines for that expansion, and in return, humanity agrees to work within the Council framework rather than outside it. Why would we negotiate when we hold all the power? Vorketh demanded. Elena turned to face him directly. Because you do not hold all the power anymore, Chancellor. 3 weeks ago you did. But you spent those 3 weeks trying to make us submit through intimidation, instead of addressing our concerns through dialogue. In that time we have built alliances. We have strengthened our position. We have shown the galaxy that humans cannot be bullied. She gestured to the galleries where dozens of non-council diplomats watched intently. Every species here is wondering the same thing. If the Council is willing to threaten humanity for expanding into empty space, what else are they willing to do? How many other species have been held back by Council policies that benefit only the Council members? You are trying to turn them against us, the Shadow being accused. I am giving them permission to question, Elena corrected. The galaxy has operated under Council authority for thousands of years. Maybe it is time to ask if that system still serves everyone's interests or if it only serves the interests of those in power. Zelthos was silent, his crystalline form dim with deep thought. Finally he spoke. You said you came to present us with a choice. What exactly are you proposing? Elena took a deep breath. This was the moment she had been building toward for 3 weeks. I proposed the formation of a new organization, not to replace the Council but to work alongside it. We could call it the Free Systems Alliance. Membership would be open to any spee. The aftermath of Vorketh's attack played out across every news network in the galaxy. The footage was impossible to ignore. A Council member, one of the 5 most powerful beings in known space, attempting to physically harm a diplomat during an official audience. The symbolism was devastating for the Council's authority. Within hours, Chancellor Vorketh was removed from his position. The Draconian Empire issued a formal apology and disavowed his actions. But the damage could not be undone. The galaxy had seen the Council's composure shatter. They had seen violence used in place of reason. And they had seen a human calmly sidestep that violence without retaliating, making the Council look even worse by comparison. Elena was moved to better quarters, her status quietly elevated from detained diplomat to honored guest. The guards outside her door were now there for her protection, rather than her imprisonment. It was a small change, but it signaled a larger shift in how the Council viewed humanity. 3 days after the incident, Elena was summoned to a private meeting. Not the Grand Council chamber with its galleries full of observers, but a small conference room designed for actual negotiation, rather than displays of power. When she arrived, she found only High Arbiter Zelthos waiting for her. "Commander Vasquez," he greeted her, his crystalline form pulsing with a softer light than she had seen before. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me privately." Elena took the offered seat. "High Arbiter, I assume this is not a social call." "No," Zelthos admitted. "I wanted to speak with you away from the politics and the performance. I wanted to understand something. Were you afraid? When you stood before the Council 3 weeks ago, when you smiled at our ultimatum, were you truly unafraid?" Elena considered the question carefully. "I was terrified, High Arbiter. Every single second of that first audience, I was aware that you could order my death with a word. I was aware that you could order the destruction of human colonies. I was aware of how outmatched humanity is compared to the Council's power. And yet you smiled. Yes. Because fear and action are two different things. Humans learned long ago that being afraid does not mean you should stop. It just means you have to be careful about how you proceed." She leaned forward slightly. "High Arbiter, can I speak to you honestly? Not as a diplomat to a council member, but as one person to another?" Zelthos was silent for a moment, then nodded. "Please, your ultimatum was a mistake. Not because you were wrong to be concerned about human expansion, but because of how you delivered it. You thought that showing overwhelming power would make us submit. But threats only work on species that have not already faced extinction and survived. Earth has been through 5 major extinction events. Humans as a species have nearly died out multiple times. We have genetic memory of what it means to be at the edge of oblivion." She gestured vaguely toward the stars beyond the station. "So when you threatened us, when you told us to accept limits or face destruction, we did not hear a new threat. We heard an old challenge, and our response was the same as it has always been. We smiled and we got to work." Zelthos's light pulsed thoughtfully. "You manipulated us. You used our own expectations against us. I gave you information and let you reach your own conclusions," Elena corrected gently. "But yes, I knew that threatening humanity would trigger certain responses. I knew that our people would rally rather than submit. I knew that other species would be watching to see how the Council handled a challenge to their authority. I did not create the situation, High Arbiter. I just recognized it for what it was." "And Chancellor Vorketh's attack? Did you plan for that as well?" "No, but I prepared for the possibility. I studied draconian psychology. I knew that warriors of his culture value direct action over patience. I knew that if I pushed hard enough, if I presented a challenge to Council authority publicly enough, there was a chance someone would react emotionally rather than strategically." Elena's expression became more serious. "I did not want violence, High Arbiter. But I needed the galaxy to see that the Council is not infallible, that you are capable of making mistakes. Because as long as everyone believed you were perfect, as long as everyone believed that challenging you was impossible, nothing would ever change." Zelthos was silent for a long time. His crystalline structure shifted through various colors as he processed his thoughts. Finally he spoke. "You are either the most dangerous diplomat I have ever encountered, or the most valuable potential ally. I have not yet decided which. Why not both?" Elena asked with a slight smile. That surprised a sound from Zelthos that might have been laughter. "Indeed, why not both?" He activated a holographic display between them. "Let us speak practically then. Your Free Systems Alliance. The Council cannot approve it officially without appearing weak, but we also cannot stop it without proving your point about our authoritarian nature. We find ourselves in a difficult position. Then let me offer a solution," Elena said. "The Council acknowledges humanity's right to expand under the same rules that govern all coalition members. In exchange, humanity agrees to help reform the coalition from within rather than building a competing power structure. Reform it how? Expand the Council. Instead of 5 permanent members, make it 8. Add humanity, yes, but also add 2 other species chosen by vote from the non-council members. Give those species a real voice in galactic governance. Make the coalition truly representative. Zelthos considered this. That would reduce the council's power significantly. It would reduce your concentration of power, Elena agreed, but it would increase your legitimacy. Right now, the galaxy follows the council out of fear or necessity. With reform, they could follow you out of respect and shared interest. Which kind of leadership do you think is more stable in the long term? You assume that I care about the long term more than I care about maintaining current power. I do, Elena said simply. Because you could have had me killed 3 weeks ago. You could have launched a military strike against human space. You could have used force to solve this problem quickly and decisively, but you chose to analyze, to understand, to consider consequences. That tells me you are thinking in terms of centuries, not years. Zelthos's light pulsed brighter. A sign of what Elena had learned was approval or satisfaction. You continue to surprise me, Commander. Very well. I will present your proposal to the remaining council members. I cannot promise they will accept it, but I will argue in its favor. That is all I can ask. High Arbiter. 6 months later, the Celestial Accord was signed in the same chamber where Elena had first been threatened, but this time the atmosphere was completely different. Diplomats from dozens of species filled the galleries, not as observers to someone else's humiliation, but as witnesses to a historic moment. The Council, now expanded to 8 members, stood together as equals. High Arbiter Zelthos remained as the leader, but beside him stood Elena Vasquez representing humanity, and 2 other species representatives who had been elected by the non-council membership. The Accord established new principles for galactic governance. Expansion rights were formalized and made equal for all coalition members. Trade regulations were reformed to prevent monopolistic practices. A Bill of Rights was created, guaranteeing certain freedoms to all spacefaring species. And, most importantly, mechanisms were put in place for peaceful resolution of disputes before they escalated to threats or violence. It was not perfect. There were species that felt the reforms went too far, and others that felt they did not go far enough. But it was progress, and that was what mattered. After the signing ceremony, Elena found a quiet moment alone in her new office. It was strange to think that 6 months ago she had been a prisoner on this station. Now she was a member of the most powerful governing body in the galaxy. Her tablet chimed with a message from Earth. It was from the same retired general who had offered to mobilize humanity's forces during the crisis. The message made her laugh. Congratulations on the promotion. Next time you decide to threaten the most powerful beings in the galaxy, maybe give us more warning first. Elena typed a response. Where would be the fun in that? There was a knock on her door and a young alien entered. They were a member of one of the smaller species that had supported humanity during the crisis. They looked nervous, their multiple eyes blinking rapidly. Council Member Vasquez, I am sorry to disturb you, but I have a question. I am about to participate in my first major negotiation with a larger species. They are trying to intimidate me. Do you have any advice? Elena looked at the young diplomat thoughtfully. She remembered standing in that chamber, facing 5 beings who could have destroyed everything she cared about with a word. She remembered the fear and the uncertainty. And she remembered the smile. When someone tries to intimidate you, Elena said gently, remember that they are doing it because they are afraid of what you might do if you are not intimidated. Their attempt to scare you is proof that you have power, even if you do not feel powerful yet. But what do I do?
How do I respond?
Elena smiled, the same smile.